In the history of our world, there are mysteries you just can't solve at the first glance. In this video, I'm gonna show you 7 of the most famous ones with possible answers. Believe it or not, they will definitely surprise you, because sometimes the answer is physics. For example, there are many theories about the Dyatlov Pass, and for some who don't know the story, here's some quick context. The Dyatlov Pass incident happened during the first night of February 1959, when 9 hikers died in unexplained circumstances in the northern Ural Mountains. That night, the group set up camp on a slope, ate dinner and got ready for sleep. But something went wrong, because the group never came back, and on February 26th, search teams found the hikers' abandoned tent. It had been cut open from the inside, exactly as the Soviet investigators later documented. Around the tent they found footprints left only by the group. No sign of outsiders. And some people had only socks on, some were wearing a single shoe, and some were completely barefoot. Of course, all the tracks led towards the nearby forest. That's where the first 2 bodies were found, without shoes and dressed only in their underwear. At first, the scene looked like hypothermia, right? But when forensic doctors examined these bodies and saw everything, it looked like hypothermia. But later, the remaining 7 bodies was found over the next few months, and this hypothermia stopped making sense. In fact, nothing made sense anymore, because one body showed massive chest injuries usually seen in car crash level trauma. Another had severe burns. One person had blood in the stomach. One was missing a tongue, something most likely caused by natural decomposition in running water, but still shocking in this context. And parts of their clothes contained traces of radiation, probably from earlier laboratory work at their technical university. But it was another detail that only added confusion, because the theories that appear include KGB involvement, drug overdose, UFOs, gravitational anomalies, and even a Russian version of the Yeti. I'm not sure what would you call a Russian Yeti. In Poland, I think it's Dziad Maros. But if you have an idea, write it in the comment section. When the spring thaw came in May, the last 4 bodies were found, making everything even stranger. They were buried under snow in a small ravine. The bodies were lying on a kind of bed made from tangled branches, and more branches and more clothes were found nearby. And these 4 bodies were dressed a little warmer than the others, but none of them had shoes. The autopsy showed that 3 of them had fatal injuries caused by extremely heavy force. And again, the kind you would expect from a high energy impact, not a fist fight or an animal attack. Some of their clothes were radioactive. Family members later described their skin as orange and their hair as gray, which matches how bodies looked after months of slow mummification in freezing conditions. But after all of this, the authorities closed the investigation as unresolved and restricted access to the area, which only fueled speculation. People in the region also reported seeing bright, unexplained lights in the sky that same night, most likely related to nearby military tests, but of course nobody admitted anything at that time because of Cold War. But okay, let's get back down to earth. An American documentary filmmaker decided to investigate the mystery directly. He traveled to the site, searched for new evidence, studied the official reports, and interviewed people connected to the case. There is a book called Dead Mountain by Donny Einhar. It gives us a glimpse into the Khrushchev thaw, that brief moment in Soviet history when the paranoia and fear of Stalin's era began to fade. This new atmosphere of hope and possibility inspired many young people, including the Dyatlov group. Einhar shows the last days of the group through their diaries and photos. Everything looked like the trip was successful. The pictures show the students smiling and posing for the camera, as if they simply wanted to say, "We are happy, the whole world is open in front of us." At other times, they looked like hardworking, normal teenagers, which makes their mysterious and sudden death even more disturbing. Einhar uses logic and physical phenomena to explain what might have happened at the Dyatlov Pass. First, there was a theory that they were attacked by the Mansi, a local group, but the Mansi were peaceful, had no history of attacking visitors, and no tracks led toward the tent from any direction. The second theory was an attack by wild animals, but there were no animal tracks, no bite marks, and no torn clothing. And why would the group abandon the relative safety of their tent and run half-dressed into the freezing night just because of animals? It doesn't make sense. So the third idea appeared, and it was strong winds. And before you say, what can winds do to a person? Maybe the wind itself can't do much, but the physics behind the wind can. Could someone be outside and be blown away into the darkness? Maybe, but it's unlikely that such an unexperienced group wouldn't know how to handle strong winds and exposed slope. An avalanche was also ruled out at the time because the slope was too shallow and there were no signs of one. Later research suggested a small slab-type slide might have played a role, but even that doesn't explain all the injuries or why they walked calmly in a straight line away from the tent. Some people suggested secret weapons test, but radioactive fallout or pressure wave injuries will have been affected all the members of a group and their equipment, not just a few pieces of clothing. The discolored skin and gray hair described by family members can be explained by natural forces or natural processes. Months of cold, dry air slowly mummifying exposed parts of the body. But knowing the explanation doesn't make the story any less unsettling. And now the whole situation becomes a bit chaotic. No one knows what to do with these clues, and the story begins to lean more and more toward physical explanation. So let me handle this. Einhar supports the theory of a scientific named Yuri Kantsevich, the head of the Dyatlov Foundation. Researchers working in that area identified a natural phenomenon known as infrasound. Just like wind moving over sand dunes can create a deep vibrating hum, wind hitting specific shapes of the landscape can generate low frequency waves, from sound we can hear to sounds we cannot. These are waves in the 0 to 20 Hz range. Human hearing usually works from around 16 up to 16,000 or even 20,000 Hz, depending on age. Above 20,000 Hz is ultrasound. Below 16 Hz we enter the world of infrasound. Infrasound can be detected by animals like elephants. These low-frequency waves can travel across many kilometers. We don't hear infrasound directly, we only feel its effects, often as hallucinations. That's why we see ghosts. In experiments, people were asked to sit with their eyes closed while infrasound was played for about 15 minutes. many started seeing strange shapes, shadows, or ghost-like figures. This is also why in old, abandoned buildings, when the structure vibrates at around 5 Hz or more, people often report seeing ghosts, strange beings, or unexplained shapes. And the same thing likely happened at Dyatlov Pass. Strong winds in that region could have produced infrasound. Scientists now believe that the ridge where the group set up their tent, or the specific slope underneath it, could generate winds that produced both audible and inaudible infrasound waves during a long, dark winter night like that one from February 1st to February 2nd, 1959. If infrasound can make people hallucinate after only 15 minutes, then being exposed to it for several hours could push someone toward panic or even madness. Think about it. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, when humans heard a tiger, they also picked up those low-frequency rumbling sounds. Our bodies reacted instinctively. Goosebumps, fear, the urge to run. Now imagine what happens after hours of constant infrasound. The Dyatlov hikers would be in a far worse state than someone who hears it for just a moment. Panic would be almost guaranteed. But okay, sound-based theories aren't new. Sonic weapons and acoustic effects have been appearing in strange cases for decades, and one of the most famous examples happened to the CIA in 2016. In December 2016, an officer at the US Embassy in Havana walked into the medical office saying he felt nauseous, dizzy, and had a persistent headache. A few days later, 2 more officers reported the same symptoms. By late 2018, the number had grown to 26 Americans and 13 Canadians. People reported nausea, dizziness, hearing loss, ear pressure, nosebleeds, difficulty concentrating, and a general feeling of disorientation. And in every case, the victims said the same thing. Their symptoms started right after hearing a strange sound in their homes or hotel rooms. One person described it as a high-pitched noise. Another said it felt like a beam of sand pointed directly into the room. Someone else compared it to small balls rolling across the floor. Doctors were confused. Specialists from the University of Pennsylvania examined the victims and found symptoms similar to mild brain injury, but no signs of physical trauma, which made everything even stranger, by the way. But the results were later published in the medical journal JAMA. Was this some kind of a new sonic weapon? The CIA said it knew of no device capable of producing such symptoms. So theories shifted. What about ultrasound? If infrasound can mess with the mind, maybe ultrasound could cause physical discomfort too. One theory suggested that 2 hidden listening devices placed too close together by Cuban intelligence accidentally created a feedback loop, similar to that horrible scratch you get when a microphone is held too close to a speaker. But even that idea falls apart. The FBI found no evidence of such devices, and ultrasound is above the range of human hearing. So the victims shouldn't have heard anything at all. Then came the recordings. People had captured the mysterious noise. 2 independent teams analyzed the audio, and both claimed the same thing. The sound almost perfectly matched male crickets of the species Anurogrillus celerinicus. Here's the title. Alexander Stokes from the University of California pointed out that insects can be unbelievably loud. Cicadas can be heard even inside a moving diesel truck going, I don't know, 60-70 miles per hour. That explained the noise, but not the symptoms. So scientists still had no clear answer as to why these sounds made people sick. Even today, the official position of US government agencies is that there is no confirmed weapon, no verified attacker, and no clear physical mechanism behind the symptoms. Still, for now, ultrasound interference remains the only theory that fits part of the data. But if it sends a chill through your veins, you almost turn yourself into a statue, but not the living kind. Stay until the end, because the story of real living statues is something that will definitely interest you. There was an epidemic of living statues during the interval period. From 1917 to 1928, 500,000 people suffered from a terrifying illness that could easily be part of a horror movie, yet trapped in an unexplained, frozen state. Their unmoving bodies became prisons for their minds. This condition is called Encephalitis lethargica, also known as sleeping sickness. It first appeared in Europe and quickly spread across the world. By around 1919, it had reached epidemic levels in North America, Europe, and India. Above 1/3 of people who got the disease died. Among those who survived, nearly half ended up unable to physically interact with the world around them, even though they remained completely aware of everything happening. Sometimes they could produce a little speech, small movements or side reactions, even brief laughter, but most of the time they looked like living statues, perfectly still for hours, days, weeks, or even years, and the cause of this illness is still not fully understood. One theory said it was a form of a brain inflammation caused by a rare strain of Streptococcus, the same type of bacteria responsible for many sore throats every year. Scientists think the bacteria may have mutated and triggered the immune system to attack the brain, leaving the victims completely defenseless. But okay, all of this still doesn't bring us close to solving the mystery of a certain ship. On December 4th, 1872, the British-American ship Mary Celeste was found empty, drifting across the Atlantic. The ship was in a good condition, able to sail, and its cargo was untouched, except for the lifeboat, which had clearly been boarded in a organized way. Why? We may never know, because no one on board was ever heard from again. In November 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York heading to Genoa in Italy. The ship was commanded by Captain Benjamin Brinks, along with 7 crew members, his wife and their 2-year-old daughter. The supplies on board were enough for about 6 months and even included luxuries like a sewing machine and a piano. Commentators generally agree that for a crew to abandon a safe and seaworthy ship, something truly extraordinary and frightening must have happened. But the last entry in the ship's log showed nothing unusual, and everything inside the ship appeared normal. Over the years, theories included mutiny, pirate attack, and even a giant octopus or a sea monster. Recently, however, scientists suggested that alcohol fumes leaking from the cargo might have caused an explosion, one that, due to a scientific anomaly, left no burn marks. But it would have been terrifying enough for Captain Briggs to order everyone into the lifeboat. So what actually happened? Dr. Andrea Sella tried to answer this by building a replica of a Mary Celeste's cargo hold. Using butane, he simulated an explosion caused by leaking alcohol. Instead of wooden barrels, he used a stack of paper cubes. When the gas ignited, a huge fireball shot upward, and yet the paper cubes were not burned, scorched, or damaged. Neither was the structure itself. What they created was a pressure wave explosion. There was a spectacular flash of flames, but behind it was relatively cool air, leaving no soot, no scorch marks, and no burned surfaces. Just a massive, terrifying fireball. And considering the facts we have, this experiment might accurately represent what happened on board the Mary Celeste. Such an explosion would have been strong enough to blow open the hatch and scare the crew into evacuating immediately. The explosion could have been triggered by a spark, maybe from two loose barrels rumbling together, or from a careless crew member with a pipe who opened the hatch to air out the hole during the long trip from New York to Italy. Records show that about 300 gallons of alcohol had leaked. 1 gallon is this much, more than enough to cause a terrifying blast. So in short, if your dad makes homemade moonshine, maybe make sure the fumes don't build up too much, and tell him not to walk around with a pipe near it, otherwise you might end up like the Mary Celeste, or maybe nothing will happen. I don't take responsibility. And just like that old story, there is another one from November 24th, 1971. Dan Cooper was a passenger on Northwest Airlines flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. The flight lasted about 30 minutes. Passengers and the flight attendant described him as a man in his 40s wearing a dark suit. He sat down, lit a cigarette, and politely ordered a bourbon with soda water, paying in cash. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a note to an 33-year-old flight attendant. She ignored it at first, assuming it was from another admirer or someone trying to flirt, but Cooper told her, "You should read it." And she saw the message: "I have a bomb." The exact wording of a note is still part of a mystery because Cooper took it back after she read it. His demands were $200,000 in negotiable cash, today worth around $1 million, 4 parachutes and a fuel truck nearby in Seattle to refuel the plane after landing. The captain was informed and the airline's president approved full cooperation. The passengers had no idea what was happening and were told that the landing was delayed because of mechanical issues. Around 20 to 6 p.m., the plane landed. An airline worker delivered a bag of money and the parachutes. Cooper allowed all passengers and most crew members to leave during the aircraft. During refueling, he explained his plan: fly southeast toward Mexico with an additional stop in Nevada for fuel. 2 hours later, the plane took off again, but when it landed in Reno, Cooper was gone. The media later called him D.B. Cooper by mistake, and he was never seen or heard from again. His parachute was never found and the ransom money was never used. In 1980, a young boy on vacation with his family in Oregon found several bundles of cash from the ransom. They were identified by their special serial numbers. This discovery led to renewed searches for Cooper and his remains in the area, but nothing was ever found. And just like that, we came to another mystery. The question of who actually wrote the manuscript you are about to hear about. Yes, this is the famous Voynich Manuscript. It's a book of about 250 pages, written in completely unknown language or writing system. Carbon dating, using C12 or C14, placed it roughly in the 15th century. The manuscript includes illustrations of plants that don't look like any known species. It was named after a Polish book dealer who bought it in 1912. Many believe it was meant to be a medical text. Its first confirmed owner was George Beresht, an alchemist from Prague who discovered that the strange book was simply taking up space in his library. He tried, without successes, to learn where it came from. Over the centuries, the manuscript passed from hand to hand until Voynich purchased it. He claimed its author was Albertus Magnus, a medieval alchemist of or Roger Bacon, an early scientist. But some people think Voynich fabricated the manuscript himself. Of course, that wouldn't explain the carbon-dated age of paper and ink, hundreds of years older than Voynich. So the Voynich manuscript has remained completely unpenetrable and unexplained to this day. The first half of the book is filled with plants drawing, the so-called herbal section. The next part includes circular diagrams, similar to those found in medieval zodiac text. Scholars called this the astrological section, and it's surprisingly large. Then comes the balneological section, which shows naked women as clemences standing in pools of liquid connected by strange systems of pipes that twist across the entire pages. These scenes resemble drawings from alchemical traditions, which once led to the now dismissed idea that the book was written by the 13th century natural philosopher Roger Bacon. After that, the manuscript presents something that looks like instructions on how to use the plants from the beginning, and the next pages resemble recipes. To this day, the book is a huge fascination on Reddit, where you can read countless theories about it. And countless theories about our next case, because next case is even stranger. It's the secret of Sphinx. Because if you look at it, its proportions seem strange. The paws don't match the head, and some people say that the Sphinx originally didn't have a human head at all. According to this idea, the original head was that of a lion. Mainstream history says that King Khafre of the 4th dynasty ordered the Great Sphinx to be carved from the limestone bedrock of the Giza Plateau around 2500 BCE. According to this view, the entire statue, its head, neck and a body, was carved from 3 natural limestone layers. However, some researchers outside the mainstream suggested that the Great Sphinx might be older than this traditional date, and that the head and neck were rebuilt from an earlier sculpture to create the face of a sphinx during the Old Kingdom. If the original statue had a lion's head, it would explain why the paws appeared so disproportionate compared to the current head. And it makes sense, because for earlier Egyptians, the lion was a powerful royal symbol. And since the statue already has the body of a lion, supporters of this idea argue it would make sense for the original head to be a lion as well. In ancient times, lions actually lived in the wild areas around Giza, so the symbolism fits. But still, most Egyptologists believe that the Great Sphinx was made to reassemble King Khafre, who, according to mainstream theory, wanted the statue carved in his likeness. According to this view, the head was reshaped simply because the king wanted it that way. Strange, right? But maybe you have any other cases similar to the ones from this episode. If you do, share them in the comments. Let's turn the comment section into a kind of second part of this video, okay? Bye.